Once considered a powerhouse in Asian football, Malaysia abruptly fell from grace after numerous match-fixing scandals throughout the 90s. The nation was never able to recover from this storm, and a few underwhelming generations later, Malaysia found themselves 178th in FIFA rankings. This was officially rock bottom. In response, the Football Association of Malaysia decided the solution to all of this would be to improve their outdated grassroots and youth development. Now, if you actually believe that, you're probably new to Southeast Asian football. What actually happened was the Federation taking an aggressive approach to naturalization. The process of naturalization is typically through familial ties. More often than not though, most of Malaysia's naturalized players were just randos with no blood ties who would play in the country for like 5 to 6 years. Either way, these new reinforcements would oversee a gradual improvement for the national team, with their best performances coming 6 years later in the 2024 Asian Cup. After qualifying for the tournament on merit for the first time, Malaysia played out a spectacular 3-all draw with South Korea. This may seem pretty insignificant to the average fan of this sport, but you gotta take into consideration that only a decade ago, Malaysia couldn't even beat Fiji. But despite this impressive result, 2024 was kind of a year of turmoil for Malaysian football. Faisal Halim, who scored versus Korea, was victim of an acid attack in May. The head coach who led the national team to their first Asian Cup resigned in July. But worst of all, Malaysia were seeing their hated rivals' naturalization process take them to heights far beyond what Malaysia had reached in less than a year. This all built up into a mass frenzy, because if it's one thing you need to know about football in the Rice Balkans, no matter how much improvement you're making, if your rivals are still better than you, people have as much patience as a middle-aged white woman about to have a screaming match with an underpaid teenager. Around the end of last year, a rumor started popping up on Malaysian social media about how Burnley midfielder Josh Brownhill was of Malaysian descent. The rumor got so out of hand that the Prince of Johor had to personally message Brownhill saying that he needed to make a statement before things got worse, because it turns out he wasn't Malaysian at all. Due to this incident, Malaysia would once more become a laughingstock amongst the rest of the region. And yes, that included nations currently under a military junta and whoever Indonesia's government didn't massacre in East Timor. However, these were laughs of fools. Fools who had no idea what this nation was capable of. Because right at the beginning of 2025, the Prince of Johor announced that he had identified 6 to 7 players of Malaysian descent. Don't you fucking do it. These were players of decent quality from more successful footballing countries like Spain, Brazil, Argentina, and the Netherlands. And TMJ, the Prince of Johor, was hoping to provide passports to them before Malaysia's Asian Cup qualifier versus Vietnam, a country they hadn't beaten since 2014. Then 5 months later, with 7 new naturalized starters, Malaysia finally got their revenge and absolutely humiliated the Viets. This result pretty much confirmed them a spot in the next Asian Cup, and even better, at the expense of their rivals that have caused them so much of their pain. And at last, Malaysia was no longer an afterthought, as the new look Harimau Malaya would strike fear into any future opponent that was in their way. On September 26th, FIFA announced sanctions against Malaysia after discovering they had submitted forged documents for all 7 of their newly naturalized players. The Federation was fined 375,000 euros, which is 1.9 million Malaysian ringgit, while each player was docked 2,000 euros, but on top of that, each of the sinful 7 were given a 12-month suspension from all football-related activities. The funny thing is though, outside the Malaysia sphere, no one was really surprised, because there were so many suspicions from the very beginning of this. Firstly, these newly identified players never had any kind of links beforehand. They just kinda popped up on the scene. Not only that, the actual familial ties were pretty vague, and it didn't help Malaysia when Facundo Garces had a bit of a Freudian slip. All of this seemed so last minute as well, with how every player was announced eligible pretty much a week before the game. And FIFA's investigation pretty much confirmed that, saying that 6 of the 7 players were granted eligibility to play for Malaysia a day before the game versus Vietnam. I need you people to understand the hilarity of all of this, because they didn't do this to beat Japan or even Indonesia. They did this to beat us. Seeing all these allegations though, TMJ quickly went on the defensive, saying that there were, quote, individuals who are worried about the rise of the Harimau Malaya. Now let's quickly look at that statement for like 2 seconds. Who the fuck would conspire against 123rd in the world? That is a wild amount of main character energy for a country that is seen as more of an afterthought in ASEAN than the fucking Philippines. And then there was the Who Was in New York conspiracy, which basically revolved around the idea of Indonesian FA President Erick Thohir colluding with FIFA President Gianni Infantino. And in an effort to save face, TMJ entertained this theory by posting 4 screenshots that alluded to this idea that pro-Israeli FIFA punished Malaysia specifically because they were pro-Palestinian. And I guess Erick Thohir worked a deal with Infantino to not investigate them, despite the country also being pro-Palestinian. Yeah, I think the prince put as much thought into this as his naturalization process. That's somehow not even the funniest TMJ deflection though, because all on the same day, he used the same news source that just 4 months ago were fooled by a copy pasta I tweeted. I am dead ass. These dumbasses actually reported about how I had, quote, smashed my TV in front of 30 people, which led to my wife taking my crying children to a hotel for a week. By this point, most people thought TMJ was full of shit, but there were still a good amount of people drinking the juice, including footballer Liridon Krasniqi. This is not about paperwork anymore. This is about dignity, about integrity, about a nation that has risen and now certain people and forces are afraid of the rise of the Haramau Malaya. And let's not forget, none of this progress would have been possible without our crown oh, glorious prince, please put it farther down. I'm sorry. Going further into FIFA's findings though, there's one section showing each player's grandparent that was registered as someone with a familial tie, where their fake birthplace is, and where they actually are from. And it is the funniest shit ever. Maria Belén Concepcion Martin. Birthplace, Malacca, Malaysia. Actual birthplace, Santa Cruz de la Palma, Spain. Carlos Rogelio Fernandez. Birthplace, Penang, Malaysia. Actual birthplace, Villa Maria Selva, Santa Fe de la Cruz, Argentina. Omar Eli Ogado Gardon. Birthplace, Georgetown, Malaysia. Actual birthplace, Caseros, Buenos Aires, Argentina. Concepcion Agueda Alliance. Birthplace, Penang, Malaysia. Actual birthplace, Roldan, Argentina. Nair de Oliveira. Birthplace, Johor, Malaysia. Actual birthplace, Abricampo, Brazil. Giorgio Irazabal y Lamquis. Birthplace, Kuching, Sarawak, Malaysia. Actual birthplace, Villa de Guernica y Luno, Vizcaya, Spain. Hendrik Jan Hevel. Birthplace, Malacca Straits Settlements, Malaysia. Actual birthplace, The Hague, Netherlands. Grandpa Lionel Messi III. Saba. The last one is even funnier because TMJ really had the audacity to forge documents of someone from a country very well known for keeping track of this type of stuff. Like, did he really think he was gonna get away with this? I think it's a good time to remind everyone that Malaysia did this to beat Vietnam. The investigation also concluded no wrongdoing from the players or the federation, which actually makes things so much worse because this clearly hints at the fact that a higher power is influencing the national team more than the actual federation itself. However, national team CEO Rob Friend denied such an idea, claiming that TMG isn't involved in anything operational, he is merely just a visionary. Solid argument, Rob. If only you hadn't contradicted yourself not even 10 seconds later.
He sets the motivation. These players want to play for him. We want to work for him. This is a world-class staff we have in the national team. And the professionalism that we bring comes from the vision of TMJ. And that's it. He's not operational, right? He's not getting in the weeds. He's our visionary, and that's it. And he sets the vision of the national team. He holds the national team accountable.
It's funny you mentioned that also, Rob, because about a week or so after his spiral into conspiracies, TMJ posted this, all the while Malaysia's federation was trying to fan the flames he created, and since then, he's not talked about the incident even once. Now that is what you call taking accountability 101. Even just taking a quick gander at Malaysia's footballing scene though, it's not hard to see that there's a good chance that TMJ is bigger than the federation. TMJ owns Johor Darul Tazim, which is considered one of the richest clubs in Southeast Asia. And you know, it just so happens that 3 of the 7 players that recently registered are now at that club. Not to mention, one of those players literally said that JDT was one of the reasons he wanted to play for Malaysia. How the hell does every single party in this have less subtlety than a fucking Marvel movie? Recently, the Minister of Home Affairs said that each player complied with Malaysian law and regulations for their applications, all met basic requirements of good behavior, have taken up residence in the country, and have sufficient understanding of Malay. This country cannot be serious, bro. You're telling me all you gotta do as a foreigner in one of the strictest processes of naturalization is be a good little boy? By the way, whatever happened to all those familial ties before? Are we just gonna forget about those now that they're actually fake and we're just gonna pretend that there's other reasons why they're Malaysian now? Also, what the fuck do you mean sufficient understanding of Malay? Fam, these players couldn't even sing the national anthem. It's already a little questionable when Indonesia uses their naturalization to ignore underlying issues, but it's even worse when you're basically committing fraud which denies actual Malaysians who know what it means to play for their country the opportunity to do so. It's also just a massive slap in the face to fans of the national team because barely anyone on this team actually represents the pride, heritage, and struggle of the average Malaysian person. Now their national team is just a bleak representation of the elitism and corruption that constantly plays double standards with its own people. Malaysia has a severe child abandonment problem which leaves thousands of kids growing up stateless, meaning they don't have any actual documentation. So because of this, they can't attend school, access healthcare, or even prove their identity. And going into adulthood without any of these documents, they can't get a proper job either. They literally have no other option than to fend for themselves, usually through illegal means. Now, according to Malaysia's constitution, these foundlings should be guaranteed citizenship. I mean, they were born in the country. But the reality is, they're not, because of biases and stigmas from government officials regarding stateless children in general. But if you're a foreigner who's kind of decent at football, welcome to Malaysia! It's nothing but an insult to those who have lived in this country for all their lives that may never be able to officially call themselves Malaysian ever, while those who supposedly represent them say Malaysia is their country, even though they've never actually lived a single second in it before this year. By the way, if I haven't mentioned this already, they did this all just to beat Vietnam. Speaking of Vietnam though, if Malaysia's appeal is denied by FIFA, there's a pretty good chance AFC bans them from Asian Cup qualifiers. But don't worry guys, Joao Figueiredo just posted a picture of his whole family. And look, it's an Asian lady and she's old and she's next to him. That is way stronger evidence than literal documentation. Checkmate, FIFA. Malaysia have really fucked themselves this time though. Their naturalization solution they've used since 2018 won't be as effective anymore because of this scandal, so this has to be a wake-up call for them. Because if not, they will easily fall back down to rock bottom when they couldn't even beat Fiji. But what do you guys think about all of this? And also, where are your grandparents from? Me personally, my grandma is from Sabah. Of course though, a massive shout out to all our members, including Janos Balas, German Sayu 7, Jeremiah Owusu Ajimong, Brazilian Fury, Django, Anazir Makalangkom, Alex Rod, Kentra Gacha, Saint Terrence, Sylvia Citrus, Rashford Enthusiast, Cheesebait, Wender Gel, Finn Likes Rugby More, Davox, The Portugizer, Wise Orange, Polo Protos, Von Fan, Lucien Von Croix, A Ghostly Owl, Coney Wolves, Leakstab, Matanai, Apollo, Congo Jazz 1, Thrilling ADT 13, Los Milos, LeJames Braun, Facinho, Napside, Money Cash Hose, Quantavia Spork, Lilia Lover, Stewed Monk, Red Yellow, Kevin Mojica, Fuxi, MX Sand, Harry Maguire's Left Toenail, Flaquito, Kev C, Dominic Griffin, Kyler Krez, Mohammed Altanib, Nish, Patrick Barley, Rashford God 5, Raspberry Ale, and Unbroken Persona. If you'd like to become a member on the channel, there'll be a link down below and up in the annotations. You can follow my Twitter if you want, follow my Instagram if you like, follow my Twitch. We'll do something on the Twitch at some point. But until then, I'll see you guys. I sure hope no controversy comes out about Vietnam.
Malaysia! Malaysia, Bailun!